I'm back and everything changed. We are recording.
So I hope everyone enjoyed that little tour of ISD as I was walking between meetings.
It looked great out there. All right, any questions or clarifications from our last meeting? Okay. Hearing none. There were a couple of people that were going to work on the whys, and Andy, Christine, and Tina. So, and I think I linked the right document there. Would one of you like to share with us your work on that and thinking?
Sure. We just kind of took what we all put together the last few times in regards to our whys. We did some condensing and including, all the different parts, and then wordsmithed it up a bit. So what you can see, kind of what we've come up with is including all Green Hills AEA staff, additional, will use technology to, and then the 4 areas: prepare themselves and others for the world they live in. The second one being display the appropriate digital citizenship. The third, differentiate learning. And then the fourth, provide powerful learning experiences individually and through collaboration. So thoughts, ideas, changes?
Does everybody feel like that captures what we had talked about?
Okay, I'm being a mortal moron again. Is that in the agenda, or is that a separate document?
It's linked in the agenda, number 3.
Okay.
That's if you click on the underlined definition that's highlighted, it'll take you right to that.
So Andy, you're farther down in the agenda.
Yeah.
It's number 3 on today's agenda, or like Andy said, down there where it says definition.
Yeah, I thought I clicked on that. Oh, wait. Notes from last time, right? On 3, notes from last time?
The agenda today is number 3, or it's...
Oh, never mind. I was on March 2nd agendas. Sorry.
Gotcha.
There were 2 3s.
I'm having difficulty locating our agenda. What is it titled?
It's in, well, it was in the chat window. I'll stick it in there again. I doubt that it is now since I had to sign off. It's in the chat window.
Okay, thanks.
What questions, comments does anybody have about that?
So, am I on, or am I?
We can hear you.
Okay. So A says, prepare themselves and others for the world they live in. Now this is staff, district personnel, and students. So the students aren't necessarily going to prepare others, or would that include classmates, like in a collaborative effort to learn?
I think they're teaching teachers too.
Good point.
Yeah.
I mean, they're growing up as digital learners.
Right.
Does this get at all that, when we talked about a number of things, we started to whittle it down last time, then charge this group with refining. Are we good with where this is?
I think it looks good.
Anybody else? Can people live with what's there? Give a thumbs up. Yes? All right.
No.
Very good.
Number one pretty much covers a lot of ground.
Mhm.
I'm in a meeting now.
Okay, well, yeah, I didn't need it anyways, but thank you. I just didn't know, sorry.
Okay, bye.
I have too many tabs open. Can you imagine? Anybody ever do that? So I copied it over into today's agenda so we have it there. Our why. Actually, you know what? I think I'll put it at the top of this document so that we'll always have it at the top to revisit. So, when we started out, we talked about the need to do several things. One was to, identify one, is there a reason why we would do this? And we've identified 4 reasons. Then 2 is, begin to outline what a vision for digital learning might look like with our agency. And then look at a current reality with where we are, and then how do we want to get to that vision? And what actions, next meetings, and so on. So anyway, that's our agenda. So looking at our current, what is the vision that we would have for digital learning as we think about those things? And so if we just started brainstorming what it might look like, given those reasons, what are some things that you think you would like to see at Green Hills over the next 5 years, say, if we looked at that window of time? What would it look like if we were engaging people, preparing them for the world, displaying appropriate digital citizenship, differentiating learning, and providing powerful learning experiences? What would things start to look like?
One thing that comes to mind for me is kids that actually have their devices out. I walk into a lot of classes, especially math classes, and their devices are in their backpacks under their desks, not really being used for math, and really that kind of be something I'd like to change. So vision, part of it being utilizing those devices.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Oh, I think that possibly we might take a view maybe of 1 or 2 classes in each of our districts, and maybe it's high school or maybe it would be elementary, and see how they're actually using the digital learning, and then use that as a springboard from which to incorporate other strategies. And start small, like in our OTPT meeting, we were just talking about when you're making systems change, you can't do it all at once, but if you get 1 or 2 classes to kind of change, and with digital technology and other teachers and students see what's going on, then sometimes it spreads a little bit more easily.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you. And then Kim, you just shared something. Maybe I can bring that up on a screen share.
Or do you, okay, I can try.
Do you want to do it?
Let me see,
Make sure when you hit this, when you get the screen share window, you have to check audio at the bottom.
oh,
Otherwise, we don't hear it. I just learned that not long ago.
So you can hear me right now, right?
Right.
Okay. Sorry, my computer has time going back and forth.
So this is, so I'm also part of a personalized learning study group. So this is from that, but it connects personalized learning with technology. It's a very short YouTube video. Is it loud enough?
In most settings, all students are expected to learn material at the same time and in the same way. Many find themselves either ahead or behind others, and learning outcomes suffer, particularly for students who need extra time to master the material. Flipped courses, competency-based education, and online and hybrid classes are changing the way we think about learning. Flexibility in delivery creates opportunities with learning that adapts to the needs of each student. Combining new learning models with digital courseware, integrated planning and advising for student success, and analytics can create a learning ecosystem that tailors support to individual students. For example, an e-textbook could share data with a learning management system about the number of pages read, time spent on each page, notes made, or number of times a video was watched. An analytics tool could evaluate those data for patterns associated with engagement, achievement, and course success. The tool could trigger alerts to students and faculty when problems are. An adaptive learning system could adjust learning content on the fly, based on data from an online quizzing tool that shows each student's mastery of the material. Prior learning assessment credits skills and knowledge individuals have when they enter a course. In a competency-based program, students move to the next unit as soon as they demonstrate mastery of the specified learning objectives. Advisors would have access to data and tools that enable them to tailor guidance and degree planning support to help students maintain progress toward completion. Instructors see which students need extra help and which would benefit from new challenges to keep them engaged. This integration of tools and systems facilitates the kind of personalized learning that can improve learning outcomes, boost student confidence and accountability, and increase rates of retention and, ultimately, degree completion.
I feel like that's really, it came across, I think, very institutional, but I think some of the ideas were good ideas.
So if we can break that down and put that in, what would we say in terms of our brainstorm? So maybe this, you get the link to the video. So what are some of the big things that people saw in that would be part of a vision?
It's very individualized.
I think it would be good at differentiating learning materials at a pace, at an individual student's pace, which I think that's lacking in our system.
Okay, what else? Remember, rules of brainstorming are, one of the rules is that this is brainstorming, so all ideas are okay.
I think that because it's personalized, there could be better engagement with kids, be more responsive in a timely manner, you know, being able to intervene or get them unstuck more immediately. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would alleviate the burden of the teachers having to know, it helps them to know where every child is at in the lesson without them going to the child specifically and saying, where are you at, maybe interrupting them if there was that online assessment tool. And so if a teacher had that at their disposal at their desk, then they could say, oh, this person's here, maybe I can group these two people together. This person needs extra material, but they're way ahead and this person's way behind. And so in a way, I think that would alleviate a lot of the stress, the analytical stress from the teacher, and better able to use their time to target the learning and the interventions for that student's need.
And to go along with that, when they were talking about the things that it was analyzing, I mean, if it could get down to how long did they even spend on each page, how many times did they have to reread that page, it's looking at very specific things that help you know exactly what you need to work on. If they're breezing through all this stuff and this is where they got stuck, That's really good information to know, other than it took this kid 3 times longer to finish his project than all the other kids. Why? And that gave you exactly where they got stuck. So that would really be helpful for teachers.
And in addition, so if a child is a visual learner versus or a listening learner versus reading, then the teacher could also say, well, this person keys more into this type of learning style, and so that they could additionally tailor their material in that manner as well.
I see it a little bit, if you think about it from the perspective of the kid, of the student, like, I know we're trying to teach kids that it's okay to fail, but I think some kids would feel very, like they're being watched all the time, that it would be hard to make a mistake. Like, I know, like my daughter, she hates making mistakes and having the teachers, that she doesn't know how to do it, and sometimes if she does it a couple times, she'll figure it out. But if she had to, I don't want to say own up to the fact that it took her 3 times to do it, like she'd feel really self-conscious and she'd actually feel bad about that. You know what I mean? But I know it starts young, that we have to start teaching our kids that it's okay to make some mistakes. I think sometimes we feel like our kids are supposed to be perfect in all their assignments and all that. So, they get that feeling that they're supposed to do everything perfectly.
I think a lot of that is how you set up your classroom and expectations for your students. So to help teachers understand that they're more of a facilitator, and help your job as a teacher is to remove those stumbling blocks for kids. So for the kids to understand that it's not about right or wrong. It's that your teachers, that's their job, is to get that out of your way so that you can move forward. And all of this, I think, has to be in the context of real world, problem-based, like, I really care about this and want to learn about this type of teaching environment. If this is just totally academic and institutional, then we're just doing more of the same, but on computers.
Yeah. And I think one of the challenges of individualized opportunities like this is that it's difficult sometimes as the teacher when you do have students that work at different paces, when you have a student that only gets through half the curriculum versus a student who gets through the full curriculum. So teachers struggle with, what does it mean to, for instance, pass 3rd grade? So if you are going at your own pace, what do you do with a kid that, makes it through half of the objectives versus all of the objectives? Just having taught, I've done some intervention classes with accelerated math is kind of run like this, where you have a series of objectives and you go through at your own pace, and you have to master the objectives as you continue through. I do like the idea of teachers becoming facilitators. I think that's really important. I had a flipped classroom for many years, and that allows you to have the freedom of engaging students through cooperative learning activities. It frees you up as a teacher, so you're not stuck at the board, just regurgitating notes. You can really get the kids actively involved. So I think that's what's really important from that video, is that active engagement, that ability for kids to go back and rewatch or review the material. We just don't want to lose those opportunities for collaboration if all the students are at different paces, as well as, is it even manageable for a teacher?
And another comment that I thought about when I was listening to everyone is that sometimes students don't know like what their strengths and weaknesses are. So if a student does need to read something or listen to something over and over again, when he's like with your daughter, it may not be so much of a failure, but it might be a saying like, well, I'm really good at learning this way, but it takes me a little bit longer time to learn this way. So possibly the teacher as a facilitator could help the student reflect on their learning styles as well, and help them be a better student that way.
I'm so sorry, my mouse is acting crazy. In the personalized learning book that I'm reading, though, they hit just on that. They talk about how the 3 core components of personalized learning, And one of them is all of that background knowledge about the student, their interests, their learning styles, their everything, like this comprehensive picture of the kids so that you can tap into all of that you just described.
So as I take notes here, people can feel free to say that doesn't capture it, or if somebody else wants to take notes too, that's fine. This is a collaborative document, so either way, just want to make sure I want to capture the ideas people are sharing. I'm going to go back, Wendy, to what you were saying earlier. I want to make sure I got what you were talking about. I think we were around item 4 or 5 there. Did we capture, Wendy, what you were sharing with us?
I'm trying to find, I wasn't looking at that part where you were typing. I don't know if I'm seeing where you're typing.
Oh, I'm sorry. If say A4 or 5, I think is down where you were sharing. 4A.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I just don't want, you know how, I mean, like even I don't want someone like to know that someone's watching every little thing I do.
Right.
Like, you know, like it's hard. And even if teachers are facilitators, there are still kids, you know, like it's their learning style that they just don't like making mistakes. You know, it's hard for them to make mistakes. There's a lot of kids like that. And so I think it definitely comes from the teachers. I think, I mean, a lot of this is going to have to happen with teachers. The kids are probably going to catch on to whatever we ask them to do. But like, I know a lot of teachers don't even like having a Zoom meeting with me. So like, you know, when you think about where they are in their digital learning or where their digital comfort level, like, I think there's a big jump in there for a lot of teachers.
Yep.
That are teachers right now anyway. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Something I was thinking of with all of these things, you know, so in 5 years, 10 years, you know, we'd like these to be happening all in the classrooms, and this is what it's, you know, kind of gearing towards and looking like. I'm sitting here wondering, how are we going to, or what are we going to put in place for our students to learn, and even our teachers to learn how to get to this point?
And that's going to be our next step.
Okay.
Excellent.
And I knew that's exactly where you were going. Thought it was a great idea to put it in right there.
So if we change that question under A and made a B and said, okay, so if that's the way it is in schools, what does it, and I'm not sure we're done brainstorming schools, but what would it look like in the AEA?
I want to go back to the schools just a second because
Please.
One of the things, I mean, what I'd like to see in 5 or 10 years, I mean, you know, the kids, most of them have a one-on-one computer now in most of our districts, and they have access to those computers, you know, at school. But again, you know, school is 35 hours out of 168 hours in a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at the classes that capture my daughter's attention and how much she does in like sociology and some of those current events types of things that are real world focused, how much work she does on the computer when she's home,
Right.
and having access to the computer at home. And I guess, you know, for schools, I'd like in 5 or 10 years for kids to have that access anywhere, you know, that they want to pursue their learning.
May I add, and the internet?
Yes.
Have access to their devices and the internet 24/7.
And on that last point with understanding the child, I think the teachers will need a good understanding of the executive functioning skills required to do digital learning with the time management, the flexibility, that shift of attention, those kind of things. For some of our kids that struggle in that area, it could be a little overwhelming. So.
That also made me think when you said 24/7, I was just thinking too of over the summer, like how we always struggle with, providing summer school for certain kids, like if somehow with digital learning, we could provide things to help, that regression or, close the gap. Or maybe everybody would have it over this. I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting. Lengthen it out.
Something we've been kind of looking at in math world too is like those open ed resources. Our in particular is Open Up Resources, which is a publisher of sort. But still, what does that look like? Thinking of like the CK12 open ed resources where kids have an opportunity to explore the topic kind of through their own curiosity or their own likes. They can look at different ways that the instruction is presented and choose one that kind of matches their learning style. So that's just a kind of an interesting way to think about education. It scares me a little bit in math world, but I think there's some value there.
So would you just talk, so in 5-10 years, you would see greater use of open OER, open ed resources?
Well, I think some way where kids have, like with that CK12, the teacher is still kind of in charge of what the kids will have access to. So the teacher has links or online books or whatever that they kind of gather. They basically gather their own textbook. Mm-hmm. And kids explore those resources to glean the information they need to learn about that topic. So the teacher might present whatever the topic is, and then the student is in charge of learning as much as they want or as much as they need around that topic. So that would be kind of interesting to use a student's natural curiosity to lead that discussion, to lead the learning. Kind of thinking, maybe that is like what the true growth mindset looks like.
In order for all of the kids to be able to do this in one of our, whys is that digital citizenship. So I see, kids are learning math through this digital technology. They're learning reading, social studies, writing, science, using all of that. I think we're going to have to, for lack of a better word, develop a curriculum of sorts that teaches digital citizenship, teaches about digital learning, those type of steps. So in 5-10 years, having some type of curriculum that's being taught to these kids. So at the kindergarten level, these kids should know how to do X, Y, Z, first grade, that type of thing, because we can't expect a kindergartner to do exactly what a high schooler would do, and we're going to have to teach them that. Or somebody will.
Mm-hmm.
And is that already part of the 21st century standards?
I think it is somewhat, but looking at where we're looking at, I think it's the districts, us, are going to have to take it a lot more further than it currently is.
And Christine, if that's done, I think a benefit would be to have that evaluated and updated frequently so that it is reflective of the current times.
That'd be like a yearly. Every week we're going to have a new update, almost the way technology changes. But yeah, something. But there's still some core beliefs, I guess, in that. You don't do X, Y, Z. And whether it's today or 5 years from now, it's probably not good etiquette to do that on the computer. But some of the ways of learning would definitely have to be updated.
Did we capture your thinking there?
Yep, looks good for me.
And I went to the Iowa Core site just to review what it was saying, and I knew it was there. I just wanted to find it. But at each level, it talks about the different things. Like in kindergarten, one of the pieces of digital citizenship that I see is it's not safe to share information, personal information about yourself, online. What are the limits of that?
Yeah, my kindergartner, every time I take a picture, he goes, "Are you putting that on Facebook?" He knows that sharing where it's going.
I get that from my wife. And it's more like, don't put that on Facebook. So, yeah.
It's a teaching tool at home. Don't do that. I'm going to put that picture on Facebook.
So anything else for the school? And I tell you what, drop that question. We'll come back to that. I want to jump to the AEA because I think some thinking had already started around that. So with that as the beginnings of a vision for what it might look like at the school level, what would we at the AEA have to do, be responsible for, think about providing to the school? So if we had a vision for the AEA that would help realize that vision at the school, what would things look like at the AEA? What do we need to be doing?
Well, I know I've tossed around the idea with my supervisor, Julie, at one time about, with autism support, having more digital working hours, that you're available online at certain times to check in with you and collaborate instead of having set times where I'm always visiting. Didn't happen this year, but we talked about what would that look like with collaboration in our building and team supports.
Great, yeah.
I think even modeling the use of technology, modeling what collaboration looks like through technology. Different resources that we would want teachers to maybe start to incorporate within their classrooms. It'd be nice if they could kind of feel what it's like to learn, using technology or collaborate, what it feels like to do that. Because I think sometimes they're, we all kind of learned back in the day before we all had cell phones and laptops and computers and all of that, it's not as natural to us as it is to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've learned so far in Scrum, which is just a process to solve bigger problems, is that you look through the lenses of these different stories. So each of these stories would have a who. So to think about who as we as AEA employees, but then another who would be the AEA as Green Hills as a system/district. Another who would be school districts. Another who would be administrators that have to support this. Another who would be a teacher that has to do it. Another who would be through the lens of a student. So to really think through each of those lenses, because their story is going to be different for all of those.
Right. And every story, everyone's at a different level. So as I'm listening to everyone talk, I'm wondering, are we going to have a Green Hills AEA dedicated technology person or two that goes around and helps implement this? Not like we have a whole lot of extra money to hire different people, but I'm just trying to think.
And I don't want to get too far into the weeds, and that definitely is one of those things that we'll have to think about along the way as actions to carry out the things that we identify that we want to do. So yeah, so you think about how, you have to think about who. Kim, I got to tell you, it kind of overwhelmed me there. That was Kim, right? Yeah, 'cause she was talking about Scrum. No, it's an excellent point. But if you try to think about it too much at one time, it's like, oh my gosh, so you have to focus in on something, right?
Right. Right. So we would have to focus, we'd have to choose the story. Like, whose lens are we going to look through? Because I think I listed 8. Right?
Did I get them all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh yeah, 8. You did.
So those are the 8 who's, but then each of those might have a slightly different what and a slightly different why. And so then being very focused on that story, you're right. There would be lots of then actions or understandings that we would need for that piece. Just a different way to think about it.
Absolutely. By the way, if you can't tell, Kim likes Scrum.
I do. It just makes sense to me.
That's good. That's good.
What is Scrum?
Kim, you want to take a minute and give a quick...
I don't know a ton about it. I've been to 1 day of training and I've read 1 book. So basically, Scrum is an offshoot of Agile thinking. Agile thinking is a way that many businesses go about their work. So it's just being open to failure, like you said before, and open to out-of-the-box thinking, and open to increased productivity. So Scrum is just one tool that they use to work in collaborative teams where you are tapping into multiple intelligences and multiple gifts. So you don't want everybody with the same gift, and you can create this Scrum board then, which helps you think through these different stories and think through what you need to get done. So it's just this whole big process to be the most efficient workers and learners, and to be really passionate, engaged in your work.
And Kim is doing deeper learning about it.
I am.
So we actually have a small group of folks that are looking at it, and so bringing back that information to the agency as they learn and share how that might impact what we're doing. So, all right, thank you, Kim. So, what else about the brainstorm from the agency?
Well, David, and maybe you can share a little bit more insight on this. I mean, in the past, we had the 21st Century Learners Conference that we were running. Where we brought people that were using digital learning, digital citizenship to, talk teacher to teacher on how that was working in their classrooms and things like that. Now, that kind of ran its course within our own AEA, but at the same time, I listen when I go to some of the state meetings, how some of the other AEAs, that's just something new to them. And they're excited within their AEA to do something that we've kind of phased out a little bit. To me, those conferences are still a nice way, for people that are in the trenches to show what they're doing, for digital learning and for different students. And even, I know in the past, we've even had students in there, showing projects that they've done. And sharing that with teachers. I'm not sure why that's kind of run its course within our AEA, because to me that was a nice way to share.
Yeah, and we tried to keep it alive. We really tried. I mean, it made a really big effort that last year, and we just didn't get the registrations. And even looked at redesigning it. I think it really does require a big redesign, because it was it was about what app are you running here, as opposed to a deeper conversation like that learning experience that Council Bluff talked about, or that we even talked about in our whys, going deeper with it and getting at some of those other things I think that we're talking about. I think if it were redesigned and attached to actual learning, through science, literacy, math, whatever it might be, that we might be able to resurrect something to get after that. I agree in terms of the idea of bringing people together who are having some really great experiences with it and sharing with others. I think people love learning that way. So maybe there is something there.
Well, having just, taken part in the NETA conference last week, I mean, I come out of those energized every time.
Yeah.
Whether it's just listening to the keynote speakers in the beginning or going to the breakout sessions where I can, learn to work more effectively, more efficiently, hopefully better.
Yeah. Thank you, Andy. Other brainstorm.
Well, I know there was like an SLP, like they call it the SLP Summit, and it was just 3 SLPs that got together from different parts of the U.S. and they put on like the summit thing where SLPs could join in for an hour, like there were just different hour sessions, but it was online, so you could be anywhere in the U.S. It was free, and they had it for a week, but then you could watch the replays and you can get credit. You could do all this stuff and it was just free. You could do it on your own time. I mean, that was some of the best PD that I've gotten because it's from the people who are also at school SLPs. They're doing the same thing I am. And, if teachers could log in for that 1 hour of time of something that they really need at that time, no one wants to go to a whole day of something when they're not going to use it right away. Like it just goes away. So I don't know if there'd be things out there more for teachers on, small chunks like this, and they wouldn't have to put a whole day into it.
Well, when I want to learn something, I go straight to YouTube first and see what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
I saw, maybe everybody's seen it, there was a post recently about a dad told the kid wanted to train his dog. The dad told the kid to go to YouTube. So the next thing you see is the kid showing the dog YouTube of how to be trained. So anyway, what else? What else for the brainstorm? We're running out of time here, and I know it's late on Friday afternoon. And we will come back to this. This is the start. Go ahead.
Something to expand on that first one with the more digital working hours and available online to consult. Something that I've started doing a little bit this year, and we're looking at doing more next year as a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, is actually providing our services teletherapy. So as the AEA, and I know the SLPs do some of that as well, but being able, what can we teach? There's, I don't see that physical therapists could necessarily go and, but you might be able to do some of that consult or, with the OT and with that. But I'm looking at providing a lot more services teletherapy wise. We're expanded, so far. Well, does that expand even more so to us learning what we need to learn?
But our kind of consultation might not happen in like one-on-one in Zoom, but that video and then send videos of kids doing X, Y, and Z that they want us to look at, that can happen because we never do everything they say they're doing when we're there. So
they can do that. Really show me proof. But it goes both ways, There's families I've worked with before. They're like, oh yeah, they're talking and this, and I don't see it when I'm there. But if they're able to take that video, zoom me in really quickly, during that. So I think, in that instruction phase, not only for our learning, but our students' learning as well.
So what I really hear around that one is explore how video conferencing and those different tools can expand our service. And that's the big idea there, right?
Well, one thing I keep
Go ahead.
One thing I keep thinking about, I don't know, it tosses around in my head all the time. It's a little bit outside the box. But a way to, cross-curricular wise, we always kind of teach math in this separate little being. And really, research shows that in order for kids to really understand it, it needs to be tied to contextual, actual, something outside of math. And so just ways to introduce, math and science. And it feels like technology might be the tool to use to create those opportunities. My brother-in-law, he's an anesthesiologist, but he went to UNTB in Texas. And when they study, whatever it is you study in medical school, but when they study, they didn't have just separate courses. They would study a system. So like they would study like maybe a muscular system, and then all the other little pieces were all tied into that overall like overarching muscular system or whatever it is. So you weren't just learning like something just individual. It was all tied together to this larger concept. And that's what I think that technology gives us that advantage to. I mean, even you guys, think of the many times that you use math in your own job and how easily we could help kids to make those relationships and to develop and see the need for what it is and how it can help them, as opposed to just this separate subject area that's just made up of rules and procedures.
Right. Thank you. Does anybody have one more burning idea? Because I want us to be able to close at 4 o'clock today. We've got about 5 more minutes to go. Okay, here's what I'm wondering. If between now and our next meeting, if everybody would go back to a group that they're affiliated with, their team, and have a conversation around these two topics. What might digital learning look like? What might it look like in 5 years in the schools? What might we like it to look like? And what might we like it to look like at the AEA? Does that make sense as a next step? Am I jumping too far? I see some nods. People okay with that? Yeah? Okay. Anybody not okay with that?
No, I have 3. There were 3 parts. I caught 2. I got the 5-year AEA, 5-year school.
Well,
What was the third one?
And just ask them what they would, what would they like that reality to look like? I wonder, you probably, what we need to do is go back to and share with them, we've got this digital learning team looking at digital learning in the AEA, and we've developed these 5 whys, and here's what they are. And so maybe we start by beginning to get the word on the street about here are 5 whys around digital learning for the AEA. And they begin then, okay, if these are our whys, what might digital learning look like in schools, and what might it look like at the AEA? Or am I jumping too far? And I seriously mean that. Is that too much to bite off at this point? Andy, it looks like you're deep in thought. I can't hear you. Sorry.
Couldn't those 2 or 3 questions be posed in a Google form that went out and just asked people to put 2 things down under each of them? And then we can see what the feedback is across everybody, in the AEA. Not just in, we all represent a finite number of groups, but there are more groups out there in the AEA than us. If that was just a simple Google form that had basically 3 open-ended questions, and see what the feedback was. I mean, that wouldn't be hard to complete. It wouldn't take a lot of time, and hopefully we get a decent number of responses.
And if we had one Google form that went out to the whole agency, the questions would be worded exactly the same.
Right.
And so you wouldn't have to worry about variability because of interpretation for using a different word.
Yep.
I like that idea, Andy. That's great.
I do too. Do we have a couple of volunteers to be willing to put something together for us?
It would be June before I could get to it.
I know that feeling.
I can do it. I've got a couple days in the office.
Perfect,
next
Diamond.
week.
Thank you. I had somebody email me yesterday and ask if I'd want to be a part of the team. I just started laughing because they wanted it next week. So anyway, anybody else want to work with Diamond? Diamond, I'd be willing to, be a sounding board for you if you put something together.
That'd be good.
I might be able to work with Diamond, just come up with what are we looking at, 3 or 4 questions?
Yeah, I don't see very many.
Okay.
And open-ended.
Yep.
And then it could be up to the rest of us to possibly kind of nudge our departments to make sure that they actually respond to the survey.
Well, maybe if we send it out with the link included, that kind of has that personal touch.
Okay. So Diamond, and if you guys want to get something started, and I'd be a sounding board for whatever you have, and then we get something going.
When do you
In
want
this
this
group,
by?
in this group, do we have an early access representation?
Me?
Well, we're in early access, but I mean, as part of that.
I work
Early
with
access
4 of them in my
group.
office, so I could contact those guys.
But I think, when you're looking at, those are kids that are definitely going to have digital access for their entire lives.
Mm-hmm. Maureen Lonsdale was connected, but she hasn't been able to attend. I wonder if we could bounce it off her as well. It should be a sounding board for us before we send something out.
Yeah.
So we want a target date, maybe a couple of weeks from now. And one of the reasons I say a couple of weeks is because I also want to visit with the administrative team before we do it. Just let them know it's coming. They don't always like to be surprised.
Policy?
And you know what else I'll do? I'll share it with Cabinet on Monday so that Lane's in the loop right now too. So he hasn't heard about this recently. I will get that on my agenda for Monday.
Our autism group meets next Friday.
Okay.
We had some great ideas that we learned at our PACE conference on Tuesday. One of the AAs used Zoom conferencing to do a parent educational event. So I might bring this up then to talk when we talk about that event, if that's okay with them.
Yeah.
I think that is our working smarter, not harder kind of group. So
I like that. Anybody have any objections to that? I'm fine with that. I think you have an opportunity.
okay.
Perfect. So let's do that. And the next time we come back together, we'll continue our conversation around brainstorming and see how far we get with that. And then go to the current reality. That's a ways off though. So we need to continue to work on our vision, and we'll do that by having conversations like sure we'll have next week, and then the information we'll get through the survey. So my job after today is to do a doodle to find a time where we can jump back online and look at our survey. So it'll be about a month before we can get back to it back here for a meeting like this. So I will get a doodle out and look for dates though. All right. So we have our charges, right? And go watch a soccer game. It's the best sport out there.
Baseball.
Sorry, I'm voting softball.
We got T-ball.
That Lewis Central game that I shared with you, David, is, obviously my daughter plays for Thomas Jefferson, but Chris Von Mendy, I think I shared this with you before, who's coaches at Lewis Central and is 2-time state champions, was my assistant for 10 years.
Yeah, awesome.
Before he moved on to Lewis Central. So
yeah.
I'm going to be rooting a little bit harder for my daughter though tonight.
There, you better. Hey, whatever it is, if it's a sport, if it's just sitting out in the sun, go enjoy the weather. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you for your good work.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.